Good evening, good evening. This is Tammy Carpenter of Simply Tammy, and thank you so much for joining me again for another edition of Women Who Win. So if you are watching, if this is your first time watching with us, thank you for joining us. If you join me weekly, you know that I always ask that you jump in the comments, let me know who you are and where you're watching from, because the platform that I broadcast from, I don't know who's watching or who's with me until you jump in the comments. So go ahead and say hello. I know many of you are probably online to support my wonderful guest on tonight. So go ahead and jump in the comments to say hi to me or to say hi to her. This platform is to encourage and inspire. We have these interviews on a regular basis with women who are willing to have transparent conversations and share from their experiences along their journey. So I am so excited for the guest that I have with me tonight. I have received so much positive feedback from people that have seen her flyer. It almost made me nervous. I'm like, oh, Lord, am I ready? But I am so very excited. So I am going to read her bio so that I can bring her on the screen. My guest tonight is Erika McJimpsey, and her bio reads, Erika L. McJimpsey was born, reared, and educated in Chattanooga, Tennessee. She is a graduate of Middle Tennessee State University with a Bachelor of Science in Journalism and a graduate of North Carolina Central University with a Juris Doctorate in Law. Erika is currently employed as the Chief Municipal Judge for the City of Spartanburg, South Carolina. She is the first African American to hold this position. In 1996, she was hired as the first African American female prosecutor for the 7th Judicial Circuit, as well as formerly serving as an attorney for the South Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice. Erika served our country as a judge advocate general in the U.S. Army Reserves for 10 years. She recently implemented the first homeless court in the upstate region of South Carolina. One of Erika's personal joys is serving within her community. She speaks on a regular basis to schools and nonprofit organizations about the judicial system and the importance of connecting your purpose with your passion. She is a proud wife and the mother of 2 amazing sons. So I am going to go ahead and bring her on the screen. Good evening, good evening, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I am doing great. Doing wonderful.
Good. I am so excited to have you here. We have some people that have jumped in the comments. My sister Cheryl down in Atlanta is watching. Rosa Johnson. This says Lane Braun, hello from Spartanburg. These are some watchers on YouTube. Thank you guys that are joining us on YouTube as well. Denise James, Kiera Williams. So we have some people that are already joining in to support you. So I am so glad to have you as my guest. I typically, when I bring guests on, as I've mentioned before, all of my guests are not necessarily people that I know or have a personal relationship with, but I may have met or encountered at some point. So I have followed Erika and her husband's Facebook page for years. They have a powerful ministry in Spartanburg, and she spoke at a women's conference that I was at a few years ago. And after hearing pieces of her testimony, then I was like, she's someone to get to know. So very inspired by you, very encouraged by you, and so excited that you were able to say yes and join me on tonight. So we're going to jump right in. Want to first start off with asking you, I know that you're in the judicial system. Mm-hmm. Has that always been an aspiration of yours? If not, when did you develop that aspiration?
As young as 7, it has always been an aspiration of, I don't know, it's just, I've never wanted to do or be anything else. Wow. As a young child, I was always captivated by issues of the law, even politics. I mean, what 7-year-old, watches the news or watches, political shows? But I mean, I would always be fascinated about the law and about justice and really how to help people find justice. I'm a 70s baby, grew up in the 70s and 80s. My parents were a part of the civil rights era. So I sort of was keenly aware of this thing called injustice from a young age. And I was always, I always felt like a part of my assignment in life was figuring out how to help people find justice. So it's always been a part of me.
That is amazing. As I was thinking about this, I was like, I wonder if this was always something you want to do.
Yeah.
So were your stuffed animals and dolls your jury and your courtroom as a child, where everyone else made them their classroom? They were your courtroom.
I was everybody's judge. I felt like even as a little girl, if there was a situation where there was any type of conflict or someone needed to be the peacemaker, I was always the person coming in to mediate or to
Mm,
advocate for the underdog, or if someone was being bullied, I always felt like it was my responsibility to step in, and that somehow I would be able to influence or reason with people to do the right thing. And sometimes that's gotten me in trouble. You can imagine as a little kid, people don't want other little kids trying to boss them around, but that was me. I felt like it was my job to try to make everything better.
wow. So, oftentimes as women, we have aspirations when we are young, but sometimes circumstances steer us away from that, where we can't end up becoming. So how did your environment play into helping you develop and become who it was you truly desired to become?
From an early age, I think my environment was critical because I grew up in what most people call the village. My parents were basically teenage parents. They were 19, 20 years old when they had me. They got married. But my grandparents and my aunts and uncles had a great influence on me growing up, neighbors. I grew up in a community where everyone could tell you what to do. I mean, there was no one who could not tell you what to do. I mean, if you walked
Yes.
outside and you were doing something wrong, they felt it was their responsibility to steer you in the right direction. I always felt that I could do and become anything, and that came from
Mhm.
my parents and my grandparents. Um, my success has not been easy. I often say it's been the road less traveled. If anything could go wrong, it seemed like I was, met with a lot of challenges. But I
Mhm.
always felt that I had the ability to overcome those challenges, even when I
Mhm.
didn't want to, even when I
Wow.
wanted to give up. There was always, my faith. I accepted Jesus at the age of 5. So I always felt like I had something almost supernatural underneath
Yes.
me, guiding me and leading me, even though I couldn't see it. It was kind of like the unseen, because to the naked eye, who is she to think that she is someone that could accomplish, the things that I'd aspired to? But it was really God, and it was really the village and the people behind me
Mm.
sacrificing and giving me opportunity to become, part of who I am. I'm still evolving, I'm still growing. I'm still, as Michelle Obama says, I'm still becoming. But
Yes.
again, the foundation was critical, encouraging me, telling me not to give up, and even though I didn't see people like me that looked like me doing what I wanted to do, I think I was well out of college before I met my first Black judge.
Wow.
I mean, so I never
Wow.
saw really a visible, tangible image in front of me, but
Mhm.
I knew that it was something that I desired to do, and I knew that it was something that I was not willing to give up on.
Oh, wow. I see someone in the comments on YouTube saying that it was difficult to hear her. But can everyone on Facebook, can you guys hear her? So can anyone else? I'm just wanting to check the gauge. I can hear her fine. Just wanting to make sure if you guys can drop in the comments, yes or no, whether or not you can hear her fine. Um, because we don't want you to miss any of these nuggets. So just let us know before I move forward with the questions how her volume is. We had some more people that did come in and say hello. Shauna Marie,
Hey.
CJ, Joanne Locklear, Linda Burgess. Looks like a lot of your members are here.
Yay.
Okay. So yeah, I'm getting a yes. So I don't know, maybe if it's something with that person's connection or just on YouTube, but everyone else on Facebook said they can
Okay.
hear us fine. Okay, thank you guys for chiming in. So you in your career, as you just mentioned, you've had some difficulties, but you've had, based on what I just read in your bio, some amazing successes.
Yes.
You, the first African American female prosecutor for the Seventh Judicial Circuit, the first African American to hold the position of chief municipal judge, So can you talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges you encountered along your journey, and how did it feel once you achieved those accomplishments, both of those first that you achieved?
To be honest, when I applied for the first Black prosecutor, I had no idea that there had never been a Black female in that role. So oftentimes, this whole idea of pioneering and trailblazing has been unintentional because a lot of people really set out to pioneer and to trailblaze. I honestly didn't set out to pioneer trailblaze. I just wanted to be able to, serve and to do the thing that was always in my heart. But it was
Mm,
really God's divine plan, obviously, for those things to take place. But when I
mhm,
came to South Carolina back in 1996 and I applied to become a prosecutor, I interviewed for that job 4 times, which is unheard of with a law
mm.
degree, with a law license, to have to interview for a entry level prosecutor job 4 times. And
Wow.
initially I was thinking, well, what is going on? Why is it that I'm having to jump through all these hoops? And it was
Mm,
only after I accepted the job that I realized that there had never been a Black female and only one other Black person in the position. So it was almost like they were trying to weed me out, to be
mhm,
honest, and to frustrate me into giving up. But I was at that point in a position where I needed a job, I needed to work. I honestly didn't desire to be a prosecutor. In my community where I grew up, the prosecutor was the man. You work for the police. You the one that put us in jail. You were not favored, as a
yeah.
prosecutor. Most people thought of Black people in the traditional role of a public defender or as a defense attorney. So when I decided to take the position after the 4th time, I had no idea that I was really stepping into a hornet's nest.
Mm,
My first office was a coat closet. I didn't even have a real office. I
wow.
mean, the it was a racially charged environment, just to say the least, to be honest. And I was keenly aware once I got there why I had to sort of go through this whole litmus test.
Mhm,
And I was aware that I was basically on my own from a standpoint of mentorship. I didn't
mhm.
have a mentor, and I strongly believe in mentoring, and I mentor strategically now because I know what it's like to be in an environment
Yes,
and be
yes,
uncomfortable and not be
yes.
welcomed and to almost feel like I didn't feel like I had a safety net. I
Wow.
felt like everything that I did was being strictly scrutinized because it was.
Mhm,
But it was through those challenges that I learned the power of resiliency.
mhm,
I learned the power of faith, and I learned the
mhm,
power of hard work. Um,
mm,
I went to a historically Black college and university, so I was used to being in safe places. I
mhm.
grew up in a community that was predominantly Black. I think my high school was probably 99% Black. Integration didn't hit us. I know Brown versus Board of Education was 1954, but in Chattanooga, Tennessee in
It
1988, it hadn't arrived.
it had not arrived.
So everyone looked like me. So it was really the first time where I was faced with being taken out of my comfort zone.
Mm. So what did that, as you were going through those processes of having to interview 4 times, um, realizing at some point, okay, there's something else behind this. This is not really about, am I qualified on paper?
Right.
What was that doing to your faith?
Uh, Initially, it made me really, to be honest, want to give up. I mean, I think at every hurdle in my life, I've always considered giving up. I'm just going to be
Mm,
completely honest. In
mm-hmm.
the back of my mind was, why am I going through this? I didn't have to
Right.
go through this, but it's the deep thing on the inside of me that says I will never give up. And
Mm,
my challenges in life have birthed that. I do a lot of things, but the one thing I don't do is give up. I may
that is
think about it,
good.
I may ponder it, but I don't give up. And I learned that failure is a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Fantasia has a song. I don't know if my husband's watching, but that's his favorite singer, and the song is "You have to lose to win."
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned that failure is a part of winning, and that
Yes.
even when it looked like I was failing, I was actually winning because I
Yes.
was building a resiliency and a confidence and a stamina that couldn't be taken away.
Yes. That is
It couldn't be
amazing.
taken away. Even in the midst of adversity, it could not
Mm.
be taken away. Even in the midst of scrutiny, even in the midst of, being keenly aware that I'm in a space where I'm not necessarily welcomed. I'm in a space where what I bring to the table is not being appreciated. I'm in a space where I'm often, because I was a gatekeeper. I mean, if you have
Mm.
at least one Black person, then, and you're dealing with issues as it relates to Black incarceration, the prison pipeline, all those things are real.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Mm-hmm.
need you need people of a diverse background in those spaces to serve as a
Mm-hmm.
gatekeeper. And that doesn't mean that I couldn't be fair, but who I am encompasses all of who I am and how I grew up and how I view life and the
Mm-hmm.
things that I encountered. I was able to bring those things to the table in a situation where they weren't necessarily wanted. I mean, this
Yes.
office had been in existence for 100 years probably, and you never had a Black woman. I mean, I was shocked. I mean, I was really shocked. I got home and I
Yeah.
looked around. And I was like, well, oh,
You
this is what this was about.
you were a whole lot of flavor in the mix.
I was a whole lot of flavor, and really working internally with
Mm.
some self-esteem and some confidence issues because I
Mm.
knew that I didn't know everything that I needed to know, but I knew that I was willing to learn.
That's good.
Um,
That's good.
and the interesting thing about that position, I was able to win a statewide award that no one in that office had ever won. I won the state prosecutor of the year for the entire state in that position,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it was only the grace of God. It was
Yes.
only the grace of God. Only the grace of
Yes.
God.
It's amazing how favor shows up after you have persevered, or how it opens the door, and because you stood, it then shows the stamp that, yeah, I opened this door for you. That's amazing. Amazing. So um you recently celebrated 17 years of marriage. Congratulations. I
Yay!
saw the video that you and your husband did on your anniversary. So while you are building a career, you've known all along that you wanted to be in the judicial system. What were some key characteristics that were important for you in your mate, knowing where you were headed?
Wow. And the interesting thing about my husband and I, we met while I was a prosecutor. He worked on the same floor that I worked in. We both worked on the third floor of the county courthouse. And he at
Mm,
that time was the first male victim advocate for a rape crisis coalition. And he and I sort of moved in the same circles, and we would sort of go out as a group. A lot of us would just go out and eat lunch together and hang out. And initially, I wasn't interested in him. I mean, I was really focused on my career. I was focused on serving God, and I did not have time to play any games. So I was like, look,
no games
hey,
allowed.
no games
So
allowed.
I'm already fighting. I don't need them.
I don't have time. And that was sort of my thing. I mean, I had a very serious approach to
Mm-hmm.
almost everything because I felt like I almost felt like I had to be perfect. And maybe that was in my
Mm.
immaturity, feeling and putting that type of pressure on yourself. If I can give one word of advice, you don't
Please
have to be
do.
perfect. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to do everything right. But I
Mm-hmm.
knew that what I was good at, I had to excel at. And because there were certain things I didn't know, my character, I felt like had to be unquestioned. I felt
Mm-hmm.
like there were certain things about me that I just had to protect. So I did not do a lot of business and pleasure. Work was
Right.
work, and I
Right.
was there to work, and I was not there to to do anything other than to do what I needed to do to excel and to make sure that I represented myself, my family, and my community well. I mean, that was important to me, that I be an example. I felt
Mm-hmm.
that burden to be an example. I felt that burden. Maybe it wasn't fair that I put that responsibility on myself, but I felt
Mm-hmm.
in that environment I had a responsibility. But my husband, we started, hanging out as a group, and I kind of looked. I said, "Oh, he's kind of cute." I said, "Oh yeah, I like him." He's kind of. I said, "But he's kind of silly. I mean, he likes to joke around." And again, I was all business, so all that laughing and giggling and cutting up, because he's a very humorous person, and I've learned humor through him because I was not necessarily a very humorous person. I was like, okay, what is the assignment? What is the purpose of this?
Right.
But
Oh Lord, you sound like me.
yeah, I'm like, what's the purpose? It's got to be a purpose. But we began to, I began to have an interest in him. So I would invite him places, safe places, like to my church, to do career fairs. And he sings well. I said, well, can you sing at this youth event? That was sort of my way of courting him, and also seeing him in different environments. And I wanted someone who, number one, really loved God. I mean, that to
Mm-hmm.
me was so important because I dealt with people who were pretenders, people who said they love God but live these double lives, and I was like, I'm about business. I mean,
I
what do
have
you
to
believe?
I have to pause to make you laugh because he's in the comments. He said, "Come on now, you stalked me."
No, that is not true. I got witnesses. I got people who can testify. He stalked me. um
He's
but the
stalking the prosecutor.
Yeah, he was stalking me. I'm like, what? He was stalking me.
Wow. Wow.
But I wanted someone who loved God. I wanted someone who had the same values, who wanted a family, who understood
Mm-hmm.
the importance of fatherhood, someone
Mm-hmm.
who would not break my heart, someone who was going to be faithful. Those were things that were really, really important to me. And as I watched his life from
Mm-hmm.
afar, I observed those things in him. He mama's boy. That was important to me. I wanted to know how he treated his mother, because oftentimes that is a strong indication about how they're going to treat you. If they got mama issues, you got your hands full unless those mama issues are healed mama issues. So he didn't
Mm.
have any mama issues. He adored his mama, and his mama adored him. And I knew that he would take good care of me, and that was
Mm.
important.
Okay. Okay, so when the two of you shared on your anniversary, you talked about the importance of covenant. So what over the 17 years would you share with the women and even the men that are watching about the importance of covenant in marriage?
Covenant is essential in a marriage, and covenant is basically an agreement between God and man, an agreement between husband and wife, an agreement between believers, among believers. And it's through established covenant that the blessings flow. So the fact that
Mm,
we have not had a perfect marriage, we have not had a problem-free marriage, but we have agreed to agree on the things of God, on the
mm,
important things. And neither one of us prioritize each other above God. God is first, and then we take a second seat to that. So, in terms of a marriage and in terms of looking for someone as husband material, that has to be first. He or she has to have that dedication to God. When
mm.
we were dating, we were very, I want to say lofty, up in the clouds, but I mean, we were serious. And when we were dating, before we got married, we entered into a covenant agreement. We wrote down a covenant, a marital covenant.
While
Yeah,
you were dating?
while we were dating.
Wow. Whose
Yeah,
idea was that?
I don't know who came up with it, but we
Ooh.
even before that point, I had never heard the term covenant. Uh, in our marriage, we said a covenant marriage or covenant agreement, and we wrote out a covenant of about 18 things that we agreed that we would do within our marriage. One of those was to communicate honestly and truthfully even if it hurts.
Mm.
We honor to honor one another, to be faithful, to cover one another. And divorce is never an option. Whether we agree,
Mm.
as bad as it get, divorce is off the table. And we established that even as in dating, that divorce was not an option, because through the rough times, I grew up in a two-parent home. He grew up in a two-parent home as well. His mother and father stayed married until his mother passed. My mother and father were married until I turned 23. But even in that, we had wonderful parents, but we did not necessarily see a healthy marriage modeled out. So you
Mm-hmm.
can be married. It's not in the number of years, it's in the quality of years.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people have quantity, but they don't have quality. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's important, to focus on a healthy marriage. But in order to have a healthy marriage, you need two reasonably healthy people entering into that marriage. Now, of course, you don't know everything about that person, and they don't know everything about you. And we had a quick courtship. We started dating in December of 2002. We got engaged by February 2003, and we were married by August 2003. So that's about 6 months of courtship. Tammy, like, excuse me?
I think you guys shared that on the video, and I was like, ooh.
Yes.
So
And for
it,
somebody who is super duper practical like me, it had to be God, because I move in practicality. I am a very on your feet. I like my feet on the ground. I don't like surprises. I like to know what's coming ahead. I like to plan. But when you know it's God, and you see the person mirroring what you've asked God for, you can move in that level of confidence. However, I don't recommend that for everybody.
yes,
I don't. We
yes.
were we were both in a place in God, and in a place in our lives, that we were ready for
Mm-hmm.
marriage. We were
Mm-hmm.
ready for marriage.
Mm-hmm. And that, I'm sure, made the difference. You both knew entering the relationship that, he put in the comments, you guys dated for 45 days and y'all were engaged for 6 months. So nobody was wasting any time.
No, no.
And evidently it was what I desired, because you're still here 17 years later and helping many, many people. So in addition to being your career in the judicial system, you're a wife, a mother, you guys pastor together. How do you prioritize wearing all of those hats?
Wow. And that has been a real struggle for me over the years, in terms of learning how to balance and prioritize. When we initially got married, I was working as a prosecutor. I was in the military. I was teaching. We were foster parents. We've been adopted parents. We have raised a combined total of 9 children who are not biologically ours.
Wow.
So we've had a journey. Our first year of marriage, um, within the first 2 months, my husband's mother had a terminal illness, and she moved in with us. So while I was on maternity leave, I was also assisting and taking care of his mom, who had a terminal illness. She
You
later
said 2 months into your marriage?
2 months.
Oh, wow.
Well, no, actually, well, 8 months. 8 months
Eight
into
months.
marriage. Two
Okay.
months. 2 months into the birth of my first son.
Okay. Gotcha.
He was born in May, and his mom moved in July.
Okay. Wow.
So, we have done everything sort of on this speed path. I mean, God has taken us on this accelerated path, and balance has been something that has been oftentimes difficult for me to do. But what I have learned through trial and error, through a lot of heartache, in order to maintain a life of balance, you do have to have priorities. And you
Mm-hmm.
have to be willing to draw a line in regard to things that don't fulfill purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose is critical. Knowing your
Mm-hmm.
purpose is critical to maintaining balance.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes we're unbalanced because we don't know our purpose. We're hitting
That's good.
every moving target. And
That's
I am a
good.
firm believer, and people may agree with me, but I don't believe you can have it all. I just don't. I believe you may have certain things at certain segments of your life, but you can't have it all at one time.
Mm-hmm.
You have to prioritize. What is the purpose? What is the focus during this time? I also believe you have to be willing to ask for help.
Very true.
When you are overwhelmed, cry for help.
Very true.
Oftentimes, as women, we are so unbalanced because we refuse to ask for help. We refuse to admit vulnerability that, hey, I'm over here drowning, but no one knows you're drowning because you have created this facade of this superwoman. I can do it all. I can bring home the bacon. I can put it in the pan. You know, that whole, because I'm a woman.
Yes.
And many of us are
And
looking like we have
drowning.
lost our mind, are
Mm,
drowning without a life jacket and without a lifeguard coming in to save us.
mm,
And it can be very frustrating because I have been there. I have been at that place where I felt like I was drowning, and then my husband and people around was like, "Well, I had no idea," because I would not communicate. I allowed pride. I allowed the unwillingness to be vulnerable to allow people to come in and help you, to allow people
mm-hmm,
to see that you need a safe place. You need a safe place. But
mm-hmm,
knowing your purpose is critical to uh, having balance, setting
mm-hmm,
priorities, and having the ability to simply say no without explanation.
mm-hmm. That's good. I like the emphasis you put on a safe place because I think a lot of women struggle with that because there's the whole stigma that women can't work together. And then if you don't have a good communication style with your mate, with your husband, where do you find that safe place? So, what would you say to the woman who feels like, I know I'm drowning, but I don't have a safe place and can't find one?
Oftentimes we just don't recognize it because sometimes it comes packaged in a way that's different than what we're used to. We're looking for similarities, we're looking for things to be comparable, and sometimes your safe space may not be someone who is in your profession. It may not be someone that's at your church. It may not be someone who is doing. So sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
have to look in unusual places to find our safe place.
Mm. So it may not be someone like you said that I currently know, that I go to church with, that I work with. It could be someone that God is going to intentionally bring across my path because He knows the need and He knows that I'm not gonna recognize it here and I'm not gonna recognize it there. So we have to be willing to look beyond what we typically would.
Right. Look
Mm,
beyond the normal, usual places and be willing to be vulnerable and open to the idea of allowing someone to see your vulnerability, to see your weakness, to see
mm,
that there is a need that's beyond the naked eye. Because sometimes it looks different. Your
mm, mm,
unbalance may look different than my unbalance. I may
mm-hmm,
look like I'm handling it all well, but on the inside, I may actually be crumbling. So we have to be willing to be vulnerable and to risk, it not being the right person until we find a safe place.
mm-hmm. That's good. So you and your husband are raising sons, and I know we're living in an environment where mothers of African American sons, are it, it's I can't even imagine the agony that they go through when their son leaves the house. And what advice, what wisdom would you give to other mothers, being that you are in the judicial system, but you're also a parent and a pastor?
And that's really a sore spot for me because I feel like almost like everything we've taught our children over the years has somehow failed because it used to be if you would tell your children to, if the police stop you, put your hands on the wheel, turn the interior light on. be very polite, don't make any false moves, and you'll come home safe. But now what we're seeing with the body cams and the other advent of technology, that sometimes even in doing your very best, you are still in harm's way.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone who has built their life under the belief that justice is possible, it's hard. It's very, very hard, because I felt like, or maybe I wanted to feel like, we had come a lot further than we actually have.
Mm-hmm.
If I can be completely honest. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, I think the handwriting was there. I think we knew it, but seeing what happened in Minnesota, seeing what's happened all over the country, has brought a stark reality that there is still so much work to be done. And I'll give a moment of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as a black mom, as a black judge, as a black prosecutor, as a black, whatever title you want to put, I'm a mommy.
Mm-hmm.
And I love my kids. And I can remember when my 16-year-old was in daycare, and I would fuss at him. I said, son, you can't wear your hat backwards, because when you wear
Mm-hmm.
your hat backwards, it creates a perception about who you are. But as I have continued to ponder this thing, and as I continue to sort of unveil, we should not have to put that type of pressure on our children just to stay alive. Just to stay alive. You got to dot every I, cross every T, do everything that you're supposed to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that still not be enough. And that's not fair.
Right.
That's not
Right.
fair.
Because
So
it's
I'm yeah,
you don't want to implant division into them, but that you also need to make them very aware you're different.
you're
And
different.
yeah.
But without giving them a false narrative about what they are going to face in society. And if you have teenagers or around teenagers, they're woke now, but they've been woke.
Mm,
you know
mm,
you know maybe my generation, and those of us who work on the inside of the judicial system, sort of maybe thought that things were better when they really aren't. And that doesn't mean that things haven't improved, but we have so much further to go. And we
mm-hmm,
need every hand on deck. We need voices raised. We need
mm-hmm,
people to be entering into the legal field. We need men and women, black men and women in particular, to sign on to become prosecutors, to serve
mm-hmm,
as gatekeepers, to serve as voices of diversity in those typically white spaces, to be willing to take the money that prosecutors make, which is not a lot, to become involved in a system that has to work for us. But it's
mm-hmm.
only going to work for us if we become involved. We have a responsibility like never before to teach our kids right from wrong, but also to make them aware that sometimes, even in doing what's right, you may face harm. Um, it's just, we're at a crossroad.
Right,
We are
right,
at a crossroad as a nation. And my 16-year-old just started driving, and we have devices on his phone that check where he is. And it's not because we don't necessarily not trust him, but we want to know you're safe.
right, right.
But I still teach the same basic, be respectful, keep your hands on the wheel. Don't
Mm-hmm,
even reach for your driver's license and registration until they ask you to reach for it.
mm-hmm.
Just, I still teach the same things. Be respectful. Say yes, ma'am. No, sir. You know, come home alive.
Right,
Come
right,
home alive. Don't
right.
don't don't argue. Accept, even if you know it's not right, accept what's being said and challenge it at a later point. But we
Mm-hmm,
have to teach our children, you know, a true narrative of what they're facing so that they'll be aware. They have to be aware.
Mm-hmm. That is good. That is good. And thank you for that wisdom. A lot of people have chimed in. I've been putting some of the comments up on the screen um, to just kind of echo what you're saying, but I can imagine the turmoil that you deal with because you, again, are in the judicial system. But again, like you said, I'm mommy first. So my job, number one, is to make sure my sons come back home. um, so, as pastors and community leaders, what are some efforts that you guys have done to help expand the awareness of where we are culturally? I know you and your husband are very, very active in the community. I saw, in your bio, you recently implemented the first homeless court in the upstate. And I know you said early on that you didn't intend to be a trailblazer, but you continue to blaze trails. So what are some things that as a community we can do to kind of help raise further awareness for where we are and what we're facing as a country?
I think everyone has a part to play and a purpose and a role to fulfill as it relates to the issue of racial injustice, inequity, fairness. We all have a role to play. I believe that it's important to show up in spaces where decisions are being made from just a secular standpoint. It's amazing to me how many people have never sat in on a city council member meeting, who've never sat in on a county council meeting, who don't know their representatives, who don't know their state senators, who don't know who to call if there's a problem, or why not show up when there's not a problem?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we only show up when there's a problem. We only show up when there's a situation at hand. But it will be even more productive and effective to show up in those spaces when there's not a problem. I can remember as a prosecutor, there used to be court watchers. There would be people from organizations who would just show up in courtrooms just to monitor the behavior of prosecutors, just to monitor the behavior of judges, just to monitor the behavior of defense attorneys. Where are the court watchers? Where are the poll
Mm-hmm.
watchers? Where are the people who are setting out information for voter registration? I mean, there are some very simple things we can do to affect change rather than showing it up once the situation has already taken place. Get involved, allow your voices to be heard. There are so many boards and that are available within city government and county government. Why are we not serving on those boards? Why are we not involved in the small areas to be effective, to just say, hey, we not only care when there's a problem, we care about how things are run on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
What is the city's budget like? What is the county's budget like? Where is the money going? What's happening in our neighborhoods? I can remember neighborhood watches. We don't hear about neighborhood watches anymore.
Mm-hmm. We don't. We used to have the little signs in the neighborhood and everything.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. We don't see that, but we have to show up more than when there's a problem. And I knew as a young prosecutor, I would look over, I was like, oh, you know, so and so is with this organization. They're here to see what justice is. Justice isn't what you say it is, it's what people see and feel. Because people know when they're being treated fairly, and people
Mm-hmm.
know when they're being treated unfairly. So show spaces. As a ministry, one of our predominant areas is prayer. And we
Mm-hmm.
formed an organization called Pray Spartanburg, where we go throughout the county and the city and we pray. We pray for leaders. We pray for the homeless. We pray for education. We pray for government. We pray for business because our strong mandate is prayer. Because we
Mm-hmm.
understand that in order to sometimes see what a problem is and to identify a problem, that is identified through prayer,
Mm-hmm.
through laboring in prayer, through asking the Holy Spirit to show us where the need is, show us where the burden is. And honestly, that's where the burden for homeless court was birthed. There was one summer we were spending time ministering to the homeless population within the city of Spartanburg. And at that point, I began to see a different side of homelessness. I seen
Mm,
homelessness inside of the courtroom, but to see face to face people who were suffering, people who were dealing with the intersection of criminality and poverty, which go hand in hand.
mm-hmm.
And there was a man who had been in my courtroom over 100 times, and he was homeless. And he
Wow.
was continually being arrested for being in a place where he was trespassed from being, but he had no other place to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the logic in punishing someone behavior that is sometimes untreated?
Mm-hmm.
He had nowhere else to go, but it was a
Wow.
revolving cycle. Him, coming arrested, going back, coming in and being arrested. And 2 years ago, he was found dead. He had froze to
Yeah.
death.
Mm.
And
Wow.
I had a moment and I said, God, this is not justice.
Mm-mm.
This
Wow.
is not
So sad.
justice. I can
Heartbreaking.
no longer stand and be able to do something and
Mm,
not do anything. And that
mm,
is a part of the responsibility that God puts on the inside of all of us to take responsibility for what we've been given. I've been given a great opportunity, and to use that opportunity merely just to collect a paycheck and not to make a difference,
please teach. That is good. Oh my. Oh my.
being called to make a difference wherever you are, to be a light in the midst
Mm-hmm.
of darkness. And for me, that's what homeless court is. It's a second chance, it's an opportunity for those who have suffered at the hands of a criminal justice system who would rather punish rather than rehabilitate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a concept of restorative justice, helping people to become whole. Will I be able to help everyone? No, but I will be able to help someone.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So, believe it or not, we are about 40 minutes or 50 minutes into this interview, I believe. But it has been so good. It probably didn't even feel that long, but um so we're going to get ready to turn the corner. So from a female perspective, because of course you wear many hats, have many priorities, how do you prioritize, Erika? Because you are in the home with men, and you have a busy schedule at work, I'm sure, then ministry. So how does Erika take care of Erika as a woman?
Wow, and self-care again is one of those areas because of the way that I am wired. I am task oriented. I am task oriented, and I think it comes from having to work hard to make certain achievements. I can even remember as a little girl, uh, having to study hard, having to show up in spaces, having to, do things sometimes which look like the hard way. So self-care is something that I have learned to prioritize as of late, to be honest. As of
Okay.
late, I've
Okay.
learned to, focus. I was really an avid exercise person when I was in the military, but that was task oriented because I had to pass a PT test. So, I was working out not for health reasons, but I was working out so I could make my run, I could make my push-ups, I could make my sit-ups, I could pass my, my physical fitness test. So again, even though it was good for me, it was still task oriented.
Wow.
I wasn't doing it because I enjoyed it. I was doing it because I had to
Because you
fulfill a
had
test.
to.
So now I've taken an approach of, you know, generally I walk every day, and that is my time to unwind, just to,
Mhm.
to say, look, guys, dinner's on, it started, or we're going to eat out, or I don't know what y'all going to eat, but I am going outside. My front porch with two chairs and a table has, during the
Mhm.
pandemic, has been my place of solace, where I will go out and I will just lay in the sun for hours to clear my
Yes.
mind. My quiet time is invaluable. I am an early riser,
Mm.
always have been. Even as a little child, I was an early riser. So,
Wow.
5:30 a.m. is my time to get up before anyone else is moving in the house. I get up and I look and I make sure all the dishes are washed and the floor is clean. And I go into my into my closet, into my prayer closet, which is really the office. And I go there and I pray and I meditate and I listen to music and I take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I evaluate my thoughts. How are you really doing? What's that thought about? There was a time where a thing would come to my mind and I would discount it. Now, I've learned to not discount anything. Sometimes your thoughts are warnings. Your dreams are messages
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes God will have to put you to sleep to give you a word of instruction, to give you a word of encouragement, to sometimes even give you a word of warning or
Mm-hmm.
correction. It sometimes comes in a dream.
Yes, I
I try
I
to
can
go to bed
attest to
at a
that.
different time. Yeah, the dream world is powerful. And
Yes,
for
yes.
years, I wasn't holding on to those dreams because I was so tired and so wound up at the end of the day. But now, I learned to go to bed. I say, hey, I'm going to bed, guys. Good night. So I agree. It's so important to prioritize self-care. More than just getting your nails and hair done. Because for me, that's not self-care. That's getting my hair done is task.
Right. Right. Most of the time you are not relaxed in those chairs.
No, because guess what? You're thinking about how long am I going to be here? How long is this going to take? What am I supposed to be doing next? So, people say, getting my hair done, getting my nails done. Those are
Mm-mm.
not self-care. I know you mentioned a massage, and I've never had a massage.
Are you serious?
I
Now I know some people don't do it because they just they don't want nobody touching on them and stuff. Is
That's me. I don't know if I can relax enough to let somebody do all that.
bless it. I want you to get one.
I'm gonna try one. I'm gonna try
Can
one.
I
I'm gonna
treat
really.
can I treat you to one? A friend of mine owns a massage studio.
She's good.
And
Okay.
that's where I was leaving the other day when you text me. you
I was like,
you
"Who? She getting a massage?" I was like, "Ooh,
yes, ma'am.
ooh."
You should try it. You
Okay,
should
I'm gonna
try it.
pray. I'm gonna pray about it. I'm gonna put it on my prayer list.
No, I'm gonna reach out to your husband and see if we can kidnap you one day and you just show up there because it don't look like you're gonna succumb to this on your own.
I'm still growing. Still growing. I'm still growing.
Wow. Okay. We'll work on that. We'll work
Okay.
on that. We're
Okay.
gonna get you on the side. Hopefully before 2020 is over. Can we try that
Okay.
before?
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you one more question. I like to been throwing in what I call like a non-serious question. I heard you mention that you listen to music in the mornings, and I absolutely love music. So if you are on your way to work and you know that you may have a heavy day or an unexpected day ahead of you, what are you listening to prepare yourself for your day?
I am listening to something spiritual all the way. I know some people can listen to Steve Harvey and the Breakfast Club. I have to be centered and focused. This morning, I listened to William McDowell on my playlist. I listened to Psalmist Rain. I'm listening
Okay.
to words of inspiration. I'm listening to prophetic things, listening to things that will cause my mind to be renewed and focused for my day because I never know what I'm going to face when I hit that door.
Yes. Yes. Wow. So it looks like your husband is in the comments. He said, "Pray saints," and Shauna Marie said, "We're praying, Pop." They must don't think you're gonna get the massage. I
I
need y'all
know they
working
don't
with
believe it.
me.
Yes, pray.
I need y'all working with me to help me get her on the massage table before the end of the year. Um, so if people want to connect with you or connect with your ministry, work with what you're doing in the community, how can they connect with you beyond this broadcast?
The best way to connect with us is my husband's on Facebook as Valdez McJimpsey. We both are on Instagram as Ryan Erika Matthews McJimpsey. Are
Mm-hmm.
the best ways to reach out to us. Hear us. Uh, DM us. We are
Okay.
here to serve. We are here to mentor. I have a mentoring organization called SOAR, which is a leadership program for girls between the ages of 9 and 19. Our
Wow.
lead, serve, and excel. We are building the next generation of female leaders. So
That's
we're here.
amazing. So
We're
if
here.
they wanted to, if they have young women that they want to get involved with that program or maybe connect to volunteer, they either reach out to your husband on Facebook or to the two of you on Instagram and they can make a connection there.
Yes, or my email address is Erika McJimpsey at yahoo.com. My
Okay.
personal email address. So if you
Okay.
have a young lady who desires mentorship, and again, I strongly believe in the necessity of mentorship. It is critically
Mm,
important these days and times because I know that I would have probably been further along had I had someone to bounce things off, to share things with, and also to build a network. So mentoring is extremely critical, particularly when we're entering into non-traditional spaces or spaces where we are not traditionally seen. It helps to
mhm,
have a network and a support system in place. I have fellow sister lawyers who I can trust and lean on, but it was later in my profession that I was able to find that. But the earlier, the
mhm.
better.
It is extremely important, and at different phases in your life, how God allows people to come in and help take you from where you are to the next place. So it's beautiful that you give back in that way. So the last thing before we wrap up, I always ask. Your husband mentioned Deborah Prayer Group. He must be giving you cues from the comments.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have a prayer group called Dare. Deborah, Anna, Ruth, and Esther. I formed that group with Audrey Hellstock. I think I saw Audrey on earlier.
Yes, she's on.
Pastor Audrey
Mm,
Hellstock and Pastor Belinda Simmons. And again, the group is dedicated to women rising up in the area of intercession. I believe that God is seeking an intercessor. He's seeking someone to stand in the gap and to speak on his
mhm.
behalf in the earth. So that was birthed out of a burden for prayer and intercession and to see women move in that area. So thank you, babe.
So the last thing, you have dropped some amazing wisdom nuggets. And I know we are all full, but I always like to ask my guests at the end if you had to leave a word of encouragement or inspiration to those that are listening or to those that will watch the replay, what would your word of encouragement or inspiration be?
My word of encouragement would be to become self-aware.
Mm,
Become self-aware. And if there was one thing that I would recommend, particularly wherever you are, in whatever stage of life you are in, because all of us are in different stages of our life, is to take risk. Do not be risk averse. Many of the things that we desire in life is hidden behind a challenge. It's hidden behind an adversity. It's hidden
yes.
behind something that will cause you to be made uncomfortable. I think if I could change one thing, I would be more of a risk taker. I'm learning now to take risk,
Hmm.
but go for it. Go for it. Don't allow anything or anybody to talk you out of what God has birthed in your heart. And sometimes that requires taking a risk. Take the risk.
Hmm.
Bet on yourself.
Yes.
Don't shrink.
Yes.
It's not a season to shrink. We as Black
Woo.
women oftentimes, we shrink because we have these stereotypes: loud, she's this, she's that. Well, maybe God created you to be that loud person in the room to wake everyone else up. But it's
Come
not a
on
season to
through.
shrink. It is a
Yes.
season to be self-aware, to stand up and to take risk. Take
And
that risk.
if I could get you to, because that's one of those terms like self love, self care. When you say be self aware, what specifically should a woman know about herself, or what does that look like? Because we use these terms and they become fancy taglines, and we're still in bondage.
You should know what are your triggers, what makes you sad, what makes you happy when you're not feeling your best. You should be able to know, okay, I'm in a season where I'm feeling a little bit low, and be able to assess why are you feeling that way, because oftentimes we have feelings and emotions that we just gloss over it. Mm-hmm. We have these warning signs. We have these red flags going on the inside of us. But instead of addressing or spending enough time with ourselves to know who we really are, not who people say you are, but know who you really are. And many of us, me included, are learning in this season of life to spend enough time with myself to know myself better than anybody else. No one should know you better than you.
Yes, that's good. Ooh, thank you. We are going to cut this off, because if we keep talking, we could go on. But this has been so rich and so full. So I look forward to connecting with you again in the future with some other things. So again, thank you so much for saying yes. Thank you guys for watching and for commenting. Those of you that may watch the replay, you can still comment, and because I still go back and read them as new comments pop up. So thank you again, Lady Erika, for joining us tonight. I'm going to ask you to hang out with me for a second in the studio before we end. And just as an announcement, there will not be a broadcast next week. Many of you, if you watched my broadcast, I think it was 2 weeks ago with Kimberly, she filled in for me for a guest I had who had experienced death in their family. So Kimberly was scheduled for next week. So since I shifted her and I have a free week, I'm going on vacation. So we will not have a broadcast. There may be some things that I may post on the page by way of encouragement, but I will be back the following week with another guest. So stay connected to the Facebook page. If you want to be on my email list, I do send out who my guests and my speakers are going to be before the announcement is made. So you can inbox me to join my email list. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you back here in 2 weeks. Lady Erika, thank you again. Please hang out with me for a few seconds, and we're going to say good night to everyone else.